Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at the week ahead. We're going to start with today, which is Monday, October 7th, and look at all of the major transits that are perfecting between now and Sunday, the 13th. So this will be an overview, and then as the week goes on, we're going to take a look at some of those transits individually. Thanks for all of your feedback. I asked you guys, I think it was last week or maybe the week before, if you enjoyed these weekly overviews. And if and when it feels appropriate to do an overview like this, that's what I'm going to do, because it's a nice way of laying out everything for the week ahead. And a lot of people seem to have really responded well to that little survey I asked you guys to take. Do you enjoy this or not? So, however, I will preface this because there were some people who prefer my deep dives, that if there's a transit happening on Monday that deserves a really deep and focused exploration, that we will do that, and I will forego weekly overviews if there's just packed transits happening at the start of the week. So it'll be flexible in the way that I apply it. Anyhow, that's our goal for today, taking a look at the week ahead. Before we get into it, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Our next goal is 80,000. I feel like we're going to take it in 10,000 increments all the way to 100. I think we could get to 100 within a year from now. I feel like that's not crazy. Maybe it's a little crazy. But anyway, we thank you for helping us build the channel. If you are new, it is free to subscribe. It helps us grow our channel and community. We really appreciate it. If you listen and you do that, subscribing and also click the like button, it really helps. Transcripts of any of these daily talks can be found on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. And as always, at the beginning here, before we get into it, a couple of promotions to talk about before we do our talk for the day. I'm excited because we have my monthly webinar coming up. I'm going to take you over to nightlightastrology.com. Go to the events page, click on live talks, and you will see that we have the Myth of Astrological Compatibility on October 17th. That's a live webinar. If you can't make it live, you get the recording. This is a talk that I'm giving on what techniques I think really work and which ones I think don't work when it comes to astrological compatibility. So check that out. The other thing I want to point you to is that we're hiring. So if you are someone who has been through Nightlight programs or are currently enrolled in Nightlight programs, we are looking to help people who are looking for work in the astrological field and would like to work with our team. We have two openings, one for social media manager and the other for web and marketing specialist. We do prefer that people be either already enrolled in our programs or having finished some of our programs, so that you're really familiar with the ins and outs of how our school works. Anyway, so check those out on the website under the We're Hiring tab. And then finally, courses. Check out the new Astrology for Beginners course if you are absolutely brand new to astrology. That's 10 hours of recorded content for people who are starting at zero, like you're absolutely brand new. Otherwise, our first year course, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, begins November 16th. Our pre-registration sale only lasts until the 15th of this month, so you have just a little bit more time to to take advantage of that, one more week. Take advantage of that sale. But then also I want to make sure people know about the need-based tuition assistance. If you would like to take our course, but you need a little bit of help to make it happen, please apply now for the tuition assistance. That is a sliding scale that allows you to pick your monthly tuition rate for the program. And that's there for people who are on a fixed or limited income or are under financial strain or hardship. Whatever the case might be, we try to make sure that people who need a little help to make their goal of studying astrology happen, we want to make that happen. So check that out. And if you have any questions about it, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. We typically get back to people within 24 hours. Some people have been saying they haven't seen our emails. Check your spam folder if that's the case, because we always email people back with their applications within usually a business day. So anyway, at the end of today's program, after I sign off with our regular content, you can check out an informational video about the first year program if you are interested. So stay tuned for that after I sign off. Learn everything about the program and what it includes. All right, now let's get into our astrology of the week. So some major transits this week. We're looking now at today, which is, let me speed this up just a touch. Here we go. Monday, October 7th, that's today, all the way through Sunday, October 13th. I'm going to go in order through the week and tell you about what's happening and what I think you ought to watch for. And then as the week goes on, we'll be breaking some of these down individually. So we start with, today is a day of things building. And so you may be experiencing the building effects of several different transits today. You'll notice that Mercury is moving into a trine with Jupiter from Libra to Gemini, And Venus is moving into a trine with Mars in Cancer from Scorpio. Those two trines are forming today. And so you could very well be feeling those transits today, but they both perfect tomorrow. So you'll see October 8th, Venus will trine Mars. And then on October 8th, we'll also see Mercury trining Jupiter. These start our week off as the two opening transits of the week, and we'll be looking at some of those in greater depth tomorrow. I want to walk us through the outline of the week first, and then I'll talk about each individual transit. As the week goes on, we have the changing of direction for two planets in the sky this week. It's interesting when planets are changing direction simultaneously, it usually signals some pretty big shifts, and we have to be a little careful with noting how they are connected. And the best way to do that is by looking at the whole sign houses in your birth chart where those two planets are located. On the 9th, which is Wednesday, Jupiter will station. In my program, you can see a little S beneath the position of Jupiter in Gemini, showing that Jupiter is stationed. In this case, Jupiter is turning retrograde. And so this week, midweek, we see Jupiter retrograde in Gemini. That's a significant turn of direction that is going to signal a shift in the storyline for Jupiter in that whole sign house of your birth chart that it's located in right now. So it's a nice omen to pay attention to with regard to changing circumstances, maybe process of revision, delays, setbacks. Come around to that in a minute. On October 11th, just 2 days later, on Friday, Pluto will then station direct. This is significant because Pluto's retrograde through this final degree of Capricorn is now finishing, and effectively turning direct means we are ready to seal the deal. We are ready to really complete the alchemy of Pluto's long stay in Capricorn. So a very significant turning point for Pluto this week. We'll be exploring that in depth with some very focused content this week on Pluto. Then, as the week goes on, we get into the weekend, and Sunday, we see a couple of other things happening, and you'll be feeling these forming as the week goes on closer to the weekend. But here we will see Mercury at the very end of the week squaring Pluto. So Mercury's square to Pluto, significant turning point there, because Mercury, after squaring Pluto, will go straight into Scorpio. It is as though Mercury is heading into that symbolic underworld after the encounter with Pluto. That is really interesting, and again, more on that in a second. The next thing that happens right after that on Sunday, of course, is Mercury enters Scorpio. So we'll see that playing out later in the day by mid-afternoon, depending on what time zone and where you're at in the world. And then finally, we see the sun on the same day, that Sunday the 13th, trining Jupiter. So the sun's trine to Jupiter is pretty uplifting, and also is part of how we know that Jupiter is in the process of turning retrograde, because the retrogrades and stations to turn direct for the superior planets in Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn always occur at right around the time that the sun trines those planets. So this trine signals a shift of direction, and one that can ultimately be construed as a positive thing. The turning points for a planet like Jupiter, there can, especially when Jupiter has a little compromised dignity, can be challenging. It's not that they're completely stress-free, but the trine with the sun does signal that there's some kind of positive process of revision or reordering, or even a period of going backward to go forward that's starting to occur. But the sun trine Jupiter is another nice trine. So several trines this week that are really nice and fluid. Change of Pluto direct, which I think ultimately will be a positive thing, though there's some little bit of final work to do before Pluto gets out of Capricorn and back into Aquarius. And then some very powerful Mercury dynamics with Pluto and then entering Scorpio at the end of the week. So yeah, it's not the world's biggest, most dramatic week, but it's also not a nothing burger. It's right in the middle. If I had to rate this week's intensity, I would be like, yeah, it's average. It's an average week. There's some nice transits, several trines, 3 very nice trines. There's a couple of stations to turn retrograde and direct. Those are really interesting. It'd be feels like we need some detective work to figure out how they're connected in our birth charts. And then at the end of the week, there's kind of a very deep dive happening for Mercury that is maybe one of the more potent transits of the week. Anyhow, let's go backward in time now and kind of break these down one by one, going back to the beginning of the week, which is today, October 7th. So the Venus trine Mars dynamic that comes in tomorrow, let's start by looking at that. Venus in Scorpio is in Mars's sign, making a trine to Mars in Cancer. So there's some reception there. What that means is that when Venus is a guest in the temple, the feminine temple of Mars, there's some tension there for Venus because Venus and Mars have they're like a natural complement on an archetypal level. Something as simple as like aggression versus harmony, or severing or separating versus unifying. Very simple Mars Venus dynamics that help us understand why they are opposites and why they will feel the stress or tension of that natural archetypal opposition when they're in each other's signs. So Venus in Scorpio, it's a little spicy for a Venus placement, but it can get some there's some really deep and valuable work that's done in relationships or sexuality, or on an emotional level, dealing with or confronting difficult and more subterranean themes in relationships, for example, is one of the great benefits of Venus in Scorpio, especially if you have trouble opening up or being more vulnerable. Or on the other hand, Venus in Scorpio will exercise a more assertiveness if it needs to keep better boundaries and be careful that it's not too open and fluid. So all those kinds of tensions are implied by Venus in Scorpio. But when Venus is a house guest in Mars's home, and then we see a trine, which is flowing, harmonious, of the nature of Jupiter, connecting Venus with the fallen Mars in Cancer, another challenging placement for Mars because it is another kind of natural, has a kind of natural archetypal opposition to the moon. Mars and the moon are like opposites in a certain way. Think about the natural space of the baby in the mother at one, right? It's very lunar, as opposed to the cutting of the umbilical cord in the individuating of the child, or the labor that like brings a child into its own, which ends with the cutting of the umbilical cord, right? That kind of that movement toward separation is very Mars-like, and the moon very much like Venus, which is why they get along so well. The moon and Venus. The moon is exalted in Venus' sign of Taurus. Just like Mars and Venus are opposites, you have some kind of opposition naturally between the moon and Mars. So in other words, we have Mars-like tensions with fluid, flowing, harmonious, feminine-like planets right now in the sky. And so one of the things that means is that there is a benefit available through this trine if we are willing to look at and deal with, more vulnerable and difficult emotions, or more vulnerable places in our lives, and we're willing to go deep and look at things that are not easy. There may be some need to advocate for or protect ourselves or others. There may be a need to establish healthier boundaries, or to open ourselves up even when it's scary to do so. The harmony between these planets, though, does suggest that the masculine and feminine principles of yin and yang, you could say, which are metaphysical and energetic, and not to be just confused with just literal like gender or sex categories. These two planets are able to harmonize right now, despite there being some real tensions. Okay, so power struggles that can be dealt with constructively, or difficult emotional and charged subjects where people have very different perceptions or very different needs within a situation can somehow be navigated. Or just difficult things can be addressed. You can actually approach them, and it might be helpful to do so as opposed to stuffing them. These are the kinds of things that we see through this fluid trine. Also, let's be real in saying that ever since we have seen Mars in a water sign and a grand water trine forming, we have seen literal flooding and lots of damage through water. And that's a very literal manifestation to the hurricanes that we've seen, the flooding. So, sometimes you're going to see that one of the expressions of a big grand water trine forming in the sky is literal water. Like somehow there's a connection to the literalness of water. So I wouldn't rule that out either. But the trine here suggests maybe repairing the damage, or maybe mending or nurturing or healing or soothing or pacifying places that are tender. So I think, for example, the fact that in the wake of many disasters, you will see, the Red Cross showing up, or you'll see resources flooding in to treat or heal or provide support for areas that have been flooded. there's a response that can be as flooding as the initial damage or trauma with some of these placements. And so looking for relief or release emotionally comes to my mind as well. All right, so just a few thoughts there. Watching for that dance of Mars and Venus and the kind of tensions of Mars and Venus in these very fluid water signs. So that comes in tomorrow. You'll be feeling it today. The other trine that comes in tomorrow is Mercury's trine to Jupiter. Now, Mercury's trine to Jupiter has a very different feeling to it. And Mercury's trine to Jupiter is happening as Jupiter stations retrograde the next day. So this is a Mercury trine Jupiter that is Mercury is the host of Jupiter. Jupiter in Gemini is in Mercury's sign. And so we have the Jupiter's host contacting it, providing it with benefits or resources or smooth and harmonious connection. And then Jupiter suddenly stations and turns retrograde. This, to me, signals some kind of incoming resource that allows us to begin a process of revision or reworking or reconsidering, or some kinds of resources, ideas, people that suddenly allow us to start maybe to start a process, or they bring a kind of change of circumstance. One way of understanding a retrograde is that suddenly circumstances are going to turn things on their head for a little bit, or there's going to be an unexpected turn of events that lead us to having to do something differently or take a different approach or reconsider things. And that's not always bad. Like to me, when you see Jupiter's host in Mercury trining Jupiter and then Jupiter turns directions, it's as though, hey, here's something new that will allow you to take a different approach or reconsider what you're doing. And that could be a very positive thing. I mean, it doesn't have to be, retrogrades don't have to coincide with breakdowns and delays and chaos. Sometimes they do. Mercury retrogrades obviously are notorious for that. But I just wonder if there isn't some kind, one of the things that's great about an, trining of Jupiter and Mercury in air signs is the idea of people and resources, ideas and strategies or information or technology that's somehow coming in to aid in the process of taking a different approach. And the different approach, it might be signaled by the retrograding Jupiter. Jupiter loves to build cohesion. It loves to build unity. It loves to build that sense of wholeness. Like Jupiter is associated with the god Zeus, who gives us that grand sense of cosmic unity and cohesion, like the government of the universe. In an ideal sense, in a good sense, a government you can trust. Now, when you think of Jupiter in Gemini, you're thinking of a period in which there are the dueling or battling or tension of opposites that are forcing you to pause, reflect, reconsider how unity is established or what the right kind of unity is. So Jupiter and Gemini periods can reflect a moment of the critical rethinking of structures and unities in our life, or how we bring about a sense of wholeness or completeness, whether it's philosophically or if it's in business or money or relationships. Depends on the placement of Jupiter in the chart. But the point is this is our first retrograde from Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter will be there until about the early spring of 2025 when it moves into Cancer. I think it's late May. Anyhow, Mercury's trine to Jupiter here is resourcing Jupiter with something that leads to a change of course, a change of direction. It aids in a process of continual remaking, reflecting upon, revising of structures. And we typically think of Saturn as the planet of structure, but it's really not. In terms of that sense of structure that lends itself to unity, like a well-organized office and programs in place that help you organize your books and blah, blah, blah. That overarching sense that everything is running smoothly in a like a well-organized, a well-arranged whole. That's Jupiter. Well, again, Jupiter turning retrograde in this moment is reflective of a continued process of revision, reflection, re-strategizing, remaking, especially through a careful examination of the shadows of something. Like Gemini loves to play with the light and dark of something. And as it plays with the light and dark, we often will bring in new elements and incorporate things or include things that maybe we've been excluding. Or we'll realize that we need to exclude things that have been included. But that process of ongoing reflection, discernment, discrimination, reorganization is now reaching a critical turning point. And I think Mercury is going to be providing it with some new angle or some new asset or connection that will continue to be a part of the revision process. All right. Hopefully, I didn't labor that too long. It's kind of a tricky little moment to describe. And I think it's made even more interesting by the fact that just a couple of days later, Pluto will station to turn direct. Let's see this along. So here you'll see this is by the evening of October 10th that on my clock, you've got Pluto stationing, right? And so if you speed this up just a little bit, you're going to see that the turning into direct motion will happen the next day. So here's it stationing and turning direct by Friday the 11th. So that massive change of direction from Pluto is really significant. Pluto entered Capricorn again in early September, and now here in mid-October is changing direction for the final time before leaving Capricorn, which it will do. Let's map this out just a little bit. So it moves in, I have it on November 19th. It could be that let me just double check the exact hour at which it changes signs, but I believe, yeah, so it's going to be the 19th of November. So we have a little bit of time with Pluto in direct motion before it leaves Capricorn. But this is really significant because, and you may not feel anything on the day that Pluto stations, right? It doesn't always work like that, especially with outer planets. But that stationing direct from Pluto signifies that the final kind of alchemy is reaching its critical mass. And that between now and mid-November, in a sense, all of the Pluto in Capricorn learnings and teachings will be concentrated into some final moments, some final karmic blossoming. That makes for a very big month, especially considering that one of the biggest transits that will cap that off will be Mars's opposition to Pluto, which is a very powerful grand finale moment that happens just before Pluto actually leaves. So you'll see this is occurring right here. So we have at the very end, this is just before the election in the United States as well, fun. So here it is, it's about November 2nd into the 3rd that Mars opposes Pluto. And then it is quite literally just after that we see, just a couple weeks after that Pluto will then enter Aquarius. At which point, by the way, Mars will be about ready to station retrograde and go back into the opposition with Pluto. So fun times. But we'll be covering that more in depth later on. I think the simple point that we're trying to make is look at that whole sign house of Capricorn in your birth chart. I'm going to be visiting this later this week in depth because it really deserves a lot of attention. But Pluto turning direct is really bringing us into the final alchemical moments of Pluto's long journey through Capricorn. So this week, the turning point may be subtle, but you are going to be feeling it between now and mid-November, the final effects of Pluto and Capricorn. So watch for that this week. Just notice what's taking place, whether it's internally or externally or both, about Friday in particular. But an outer planet stationing is kind of a prolonged experience. You probably won't be noticing this all week. Now we get into the 13th, and that's Sunday, at the very end of the week, we have a couple of really big dynamics happening. One, we'll talk about this next Monday, but the sun is moving into a square with Mars. It doesn't perfect until Monday, but that's interesting to note. But I think the big one that we're going to be noticing for sure is, let's just draw this up here. So if we go back, I'm just going to go back like a couple of hours here. Yeah, here it is. You're going to see Mercury at the very last anaretic degree of Libra squaring Pluto. This is another one of those moments that is really highlighting Pluto's turn direct and um, its final work for us in Capricorn. The Mercury Pluto dynamic can be about powerful revelations of unseen material that you're becoming aware of, uh, emails, or, I wouldn't be surprised if this, it's funny, we call it the October surprise. I wouldn't be shocked to see revelation of hidden material or, scandalous kinds of material being revealed while Mercury is squaring Pluto, because that's a very common thing that happens with Mercury square Pluto. The need to talk about or address something that has been um, hidden, or just maybe we haven't felt like we've had the right diplomatically ideal situation in which to discuss something that's difficult. I would see that as a real possibility, given that the sun is also moving into a square with Mars in Cancer. So it's like, how do I be diplomatic about something very emotionally charged? This can also be a moment of correcting errors in our perception. Mercury square to Pluto is often about insight as to something that we haven't been seeing, and now we understand, now we get it. If you're a student of something, this is a great moment to revise or almost like improve or enhance your understanding of a concept or a technique or a skill. Often because you'll have a moment with Mercury Pluto where you go, oh, I didn't get it. I did not get it until right now. Now I finally understand something, or something clicks into place in a powerful moment of revelation and understanding. Empowered speech, difficult, diplomatically complex situations that require tact. However, sometimes, Mercury in Libra wants to be so tactful. But this is a Mercury in Libra that's recovering from combustion, and that is about to move into Scorpio. And so I just wonder if this doesn't start us down a train, or like a train of thought, or a pathway where we are being asked to look at unconscious or hidden material, or to be a little bit more investigative, like an investigative journalist, or to dive below the surface. Because the encounter with Pluto leads almost immediately to Mercury entering Scorpio later in the same day. And if Mercury in Scorpio is good for anything, it is like, oh, if you're going to study therapy, or if you're going to study, investigative journalism or detective work or cybersecurity, or anything that requires depth, protectiveness, secrecy, emotional nuance, and bravery. And also, I think just in general, Mercury square to Pluto is looking at something and saying, oh, it's not what it's appeared to. This isn't what we've thought it was. The facade is being shown for what it is. It's just a facade. And then once we know that, we're all of a sudden, it's like, oh, like I would say there's something that I have noticed in, doing a lot of readings over time, which is often, and I'll just use this very basic example. I'm not trying to get anyone scared about this happening to you, right? It's just an example. When someone discovers that their spouse has had a secret issue, whether it's an addiction they've been hiding, or infidelity, or financial issues, say hidden credit cards, something like that. Often what happens is when someone realizes, oh, I have not been seeing this. This is something that's coming to my attention. And it could be about anything. It doesn't have to be about a spouse, right? It could be about something at your workplace or whatever. All of a sudden you start questioning everything. And that's really important, because growing up and not being naive and developing a deeper trust in our instincts. Like if something had been coming up and saying, I think something's going on. And you're like, oh, no, don't be paranoid, right? And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, there was something going on. You'll often go into a period where you need to question things at a much deeper level and allow yourself the room to trust your instincts. However, we have to be careful, because sometimes when things are revealed and you see that there is more than meets the eye, you can also fall into a period of cynicism where you don't trust anything, or you become paranoid or overly suspicious. So this is a moment with the Mercury square to Pluto where I could see a lot of us starting to understand things that have been hidden, and then going into a space of deeper probing, deeper questioning, a deeper trusting and relying on our instincts, our feelings about situations. And on the other hand, having to be careful that we don't drift into cynicism, suspicion, paranoia, defeatism. I can't trust anyone. Nothing's real. Nothing is trustworthy, that kind of thing. Those are all good tests for us anytime Mercury is in Scorpio, by the way, as is the willingness to just confront and deal with our own baggage. Like that moment where you say, I'm going to go to therapy, or that moment where you say, I'm going to seek out some kind of healing for a trauma. I need to talk about what's happened, or I need to find new approaches to dealing with, certain patterns in my psychology, my mental or emotional health, or how I communicate with people. So there's this kind of level of honesty and of getting real and of getting beneath the surface that starts coming in over the weekend with these transits. Finally, what I love about the weekend is, even though all of that, Mercury, Pluto, Mercury entering Scorpio, is kind of heavy, at the same time, I feel like there's a lightness in the air that's kind of, I don't know, just offering a little bit of support and almost like a protectiveness at the same time, right? And that's the Sun trine Jupiter. One of the great experiences about the Sun trine Jupiter is that feeling of an enlightened perspective. Oh, wow. The sun was the source of illumination and clarity. Jupiter likes to build cohesive structures. So no wonder that the two of them are both associated with things like philosophy and religion and enlightenment and teachers and gurus and leaders. Any leader who, by their example, shows us a path of virtue, whether it's the Dalai Lama or maybe at certain times in history, maybe even certain social or political figures that have been luminaries. That archetype of the shining example, the path to truth, the higher awareness. The Sun's trine to Jupiter is a moment of greater or grander clarity. I love that that's happening as Jupiter turns retrograde, because it's a clarity that is leading to a better way of doing things. The same kind of feeling that I get from Mercury square Pluto. So Mercury square Pluto is a little difficult. Do we see maybe the way something really is beneath the surface versus how it's appeared, to us, or how we've been perceiving something versus what it actually is? Yes, that's a possibility. But in this case, with the Sun trine Jupiter, it would probably lead to a better way of doing something, a more enlightened or mature way of doing something. And yeah, maybe there's a process of needing to revise or restructure something because we're having an important learning moment. But I mean, I live, it's like, there's a great saying that one of my teachers liked to say, and he said, I live to be corrected. And by that, he didn't mean like I live to try to become perfect. He just meant like, there's really no better experience than having an opportunity to see something for what it is, for opportunities that we have to grow wiser, or maybe a little bit better at something we do, like a craft or a skill, to have a little bit more understanding, to use aha moments, even if they're a little painful or unexpected, or we feel a little disillusioned or surprised by something. Wow, that was a revelation. But that we can use that to revise things, to make them a little bit better, to become wiser, and to hopefully become more patient, compassionate with ourselves and with other people. And that's nothing but a win. And we should be excited that, the universe gives us opportunities, so to speak, for such correction, for such adjustments. If you don't like the word correction, you can just think about it as a kind of an adjustment or a moment of greater awareness. So for as difficult as Mercury Pluto looks over the weekend, and Mercury diving right into Scorpio, it is as though this brings with it an opportunity for greater philosophical understanding. I am very excited about that. That to me that's wonderful. I love that. So I will leave it there. This is our weekly overview, and lots of things that we will be then looking into as the week goes on. More opportunity to take these individual transits and break them down and look at them from lots of different angles. So I look forward to that. Especially, this week I'm going to be trying to focus on some summarizing thoughts for Pluto in Capricorn one more time. And then when we get into November, I'll be prepping us with more thoughts on Pluto into Aquarius and so forth. So yeah, if you have stories to share about any of these transits ever, use the hashtag grabbed, or email us your story, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. When you use the hashtag grabbed, tell us the transit and your story, and we may feature in an upcoming storytelling episode. I'm hoping to do one probably in later this month or in November, kind of on the tail of on the kind of riding the coattails of the eclipses, maybe have another storytelling episode. All right, that's it for today. After I sign off, you can stick around to hear more about the upcoming year 1 program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. Our next 1-year class begins on November 16th. There's need-based tuition if you would like to take advantage of it. And when I sign off, you can hear me tell you all about the program and what it includes. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye. Hey, everyone. I'm glad that you're sticking around to hear more about the year 1 program that's coming up. The program starts on November 16th of this fall. And I am here today to tell you all that the program includes and why I think you really like it if you're thinking about studying astrology. So a few practical details about the course as well. The class begins November 16th, as I mentioned, but it takes place on Saturdays from 12 to about 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern time. So that's 11 to 2 Central, and typically classes are about 2 hours long. Sometimes they run over with Q&A and discussion, but you can always plan for about 2 hours and you won't miss any of the actual lecture content for the day. You may have to duck out a little early if Q&A or discussion is extending. Sometimes it does, which is why we say between 2 and 3 hours, but typically it's around 2. All of the classes are recorded, so if you can't attend live, you are more than welcome to watch the recordings at your own pace and on your own time. You have lifetime access to the recordings, and everything is housed on a student website. I want to actually give you a just a little preview of what that student website looks like. So I am going to open up my own version of Thinkific, which is the platform that we use. So here's some of my courses. These are all the Nightlight courses I teach. You can see on the page. But I'm going to tune into, let's go to Nightlight 28, which is the section that began in June of 2024. So here you're going to see that we have orientation instructions, course information, class links, and calendar. Everything that you need to know how to access the course is there, and you'll have a version of this in your own panel that you get set up with when you enroll. And then our lessons are laid out. So lesson 1, we have the video, the audio, the slides, the transcript. We have the Q&A box transcript so you can see what people were saying in the chat box during class. We have flashcards. We have a workbook. We have planet and sign glyph flashcards. We have bonus material, videos that we like from YouTube that we link you to. Say, check this video out, check that video out. They go along with some of the things we talked about in class. So every lesson has material for you to go as far as you want with, but the main thing is the video, audio, slides, transcript, etc. are all listed there so that you can download and watch it on your own time if you can't attend live. Again, the live classes do happen on Saturdays for this cohort, starting November 16th. That is our first day of class. And then going forward, it always meets on Saturdays, and we give you the class schedule to map out. And the breaks that we have, the study sessions that we have, everything's mapped out on the class calendar for you. So those are just a few practical details that, just to kind of start us off with. So I'm going to take you over to the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. And I'm going to share with you some information about the program and sort of walk you through what it includes and what you can expect. So it is an almost year-long program. We typically finish between 10 and 11 months out of the year. It can depend a little bit on some of my teaching and scheduling, because sometimes I teach at conferences and it may delay some of our modules by a week or something like that. But it's typically around 10 to 11 months that the program lasts. So we call it our first year program. At Nightlight, we have a program for absolute beginners. You may want to check that out if you are like brand spanking new. That would be 8 to 10 hours of content that's really meant to set you up for the first year course. We sort of assume that if you're coming into the first year program, you already know a little bit about astrology. For example, you have some familiarity with the signs, planets, and houses. Maybe you know what aspects are, but you want to learn more about what they are. But if you are really at the very total entry level space, then try Astrology for Beginners. And when you take that, you could do that right away and then join the first year course in November, and you'd be perfectly set up for it. But anyhow, in this program, over the course of about a year, we work through 30 lessons that I lead. And those lessons are all 2 to 3 hours each, including lecture, a little break, and a Q&A portion where we open up for people to come on mic and camera and ask questions and have an interactive discussion about the material for the day. The program is broken into modules that cover a variety of topics in ancient Hellenistic astrology. That is the earliest era of horoscopic astrology. And so, if you don't know a lot about the different schools of astrology, Hellenistic astrology is going to be the kind of astrology that you see a lot of astrologers practicing nowadays. It's become more popular in the last 30 years or so. And that is due to the fact that a lot of ancient texts with some of the original techniques of horoscopic astrologers were recently translated into the English language, and it's created this renaissance in terms of the use of ancient approaches to astrology. I have a background in modern psychological, archetypal, and evolutionary astrology, and so of course I bring those things to the table, but the course is primarily focused on the excavation of ancient techniques and the spiritual philosophy that ancient astrologers also espoused. The closest thing that I can tell you to what that looks like is, ask this question: do you resonate with the philosophy that you hear me take on my YouTube channel? If so, then you're going to love this course in terms of its philosophical and spiritual approach, because the spiritual approach to astrology that I teach is really at the heart of the program. And that's a big part of my life. I approach astrology from a spiritual standpoint. It doesn't belong to one religion or one particular school of thought, but you will hear me talking about things like the soul, the belief in the transmigration of the soul. You'll hear me talk about the need to be soul-centered in our client approach to counseling in astrology. You'll hear me have an appreciation for psychological dimensions of astrology, but also ancient astrology is really very, very good at developing your predictive capacity. We talk about what kinds of predictions are appropriate, how to make appropriate predictions, how to be the right kind of astrologer for our clients without inducing any fear. So there's a lot of care that goes into the development of this craft. But ancient astrology is really amazing when it comes to honing your predictive abilities. And then what you'll find is in this program, there's also a pretty significant emphasis on the psychological dimensions and client care. Anyhow, we go into the roots of ancient Hellenistic astrology and its techniques in this program, and the 30 classes are broken into modules. We work through the history and philosophy. We work through planets, houses, signs, aspects, essential and accidental dignities, and then we get into approaches to the delineation of natal charts. And then at the end of the program, almost a third of the program is dedicated to live client readings, where you're going to see me meet with a person and apply what we've been studying for an hour-long reading. We take a break, we come back, and then we workshop. How did I do that? Why did I make these choices? How did I handle this or that came up in the reading? And it becomes easily the favorite part for most students of the entire program, because by that point, you've got so much theory that you're really ready to see it put into action. We alternate those live client practice sessions with hands-on practice, where students get to bring chart questions into class that we work on. And that's also something that most people really love. A lot of people will look at the curriculum and say, well, I already know planets, houses, and signs and aspects and dignities. But not if you haven't studied Hellenistic astrology, because the approach that ancient astrologers had to these topics is vastly different from the approach that modern astrologers take. So you will be, in a sense, relearning basic things in a brand new way. And I think a much more enriching, deep, and philosophically clear way. It's really nice to know the why behind things. This program and Hellenistic astrology in general is very good at helping you understand the why behind everything that we do. Also, it's really important to participate when you study astrology in a living lineage. So one of the reasons I don't let people jump ahead to my second or third year programs is because I want you to be entrained to a lineage, a particular way of doing things that comes from an astrologer who has a very living, busy, active practice and who has had teachers themselves. I think that's important for astrological learning. That's the model that my own learning take, and so that's what I really want students to take away from my programs. Anyhow, so all of that aside, the second year program focuses, after we build our understanding of the basic delineation techniques of birth charts, in year 2, we move into timing techniques, which is all about when the karma of a birth chart is going to be active and expressing itself throughout the course of a lifetime. That's year 2. Year 3 focuses on the development of counseling skills, at a much deeper level. And then we also have a 1-year horary program, which is about the development of a very specific predictive technique that can be a really amazing tool to add to your kit. That is 4 years worth of training programs that we have. However, I want to mention that many people take our classes just for the sake, purely for the sake of their own personal growth. Taking these programs is very much like being taught how to utilize a technology that for yourself will be deeply useful for the rest of your life, and maybe for close friends or family members around you. Many people come through our programs taking that benefit away and will study through all 4 years of our programs with no intention of being professional. This is their hobby. This is a spiritual tool that will have it will pay dividends over a long period of time. However, many people without the intention to practice come into our courses and discover that they're actually good at it and may end up reading for other people part-time. And then there are students who are deeply, intensely motivated to practice for other people. And it is not that our programs really make those people successful. Our programs contribute to your development, but it really is that some people have a calling to practice professionally. And these programs are designed to give you all the tools you need to develop that confidence and to develop a really coherent set of tools and to entrain yourself to a lineage, which you can also develop your own unique style out of. So those are some of the kinds of people that take our programs, you might say. So the 30 classes on the year are then broken into modules. And in between modules, we have 2 course directors who are present in all of the classes, and they lead breakout tutoring sessions where you can come in and review or ask questions about the module that we've just completed, which is usually anywhere between 2 and 3 classes each. So those breakout study sessions led by our tutors are outside of the 30 classes and very useful. A lot of people like to attend those because they also offer opportunity for community and just lively conversation. We also have 12 online webinar classes led by guest teachers that we host throughout the year. Those are free, and if you can't make them live, they're all uploaded into your student folder. You also have an interactive group forum discussion staffed with tutors who typically respond to questions that you have about the material within 24 hours. So if you can't attend a tutoring session or you just have a random question on a Tuesday night, you can pop it in there and you'll get an answer. We also have a ton of bonus material, optional quizzes, flashcards, tons of supplemental material that is there to help people go as deeply as they want. We have a reading list that is expansive. And that reading list, we don't expect anyone to accomplish. It's more so a resource that we give you saying, here, if you want to know all the things I've read, if you want to know all the things that I love, if you want to know all the things I recommend, here's a master list of everything for each lesson. You could go, PhD level if you wanted to and read thousands and thousands of pages. Or you might find that there's just one extra book that looks really interesting and you want to pick it up. But we pride ourselves on making sure you have a ton of resources. You have lifetime access to all the class recordings. You can email our staff or me throughout the year with questions, and my staff will also defer to me in the case that they don't know the answer to a question. So that is what the program includes. It starts November 16th. If you would like to join, at the bottom between now and October 15th, our early bird payments are available. So that saves you some money off the cost of the course. There is a 12-month installment plan that is cheaper than our normal plan, a one-time payment that's significantly cheaper than our normal one-time payment. So you get these little sales that we do until October 15th. We also have need-based tuition assistance. So if you are someone who would like to take this program, but you are on a fixed or tight budget, we have an application there. Click apply now. Just tell us what you need. We give a range. We say between this dollar amount and this dollar amount, what can you spend? And then we set you up with a plan for that tuition number per month. And that is available for anyone. We ask people to apply early because those spots are limited, but we are really accommodating. We try to make sure that nobody's priced out of a spiritual education. Like, this topic should be very accessible for people because I believe that the divine is speaking through the sky, and like anyone should have access to understanding what it's saying, right? So anyway, that is a bit about the program. I hope that this has been useful for you. If there are any questions you have, you can look over the curriculum content on the page on the year 1 page. There's more information there. Check out the FAQ section for more questions. Email us info@nightlightastrology.com. And I hope to see some of you in class soon. I think this is going to be a really powerful program because it's also starting right as Pluto's moving into Aquarius. And within the year, we're going to have a Uranus-Pluto trine with Uranus in Gemini. These Aries signatures and the connection between Uranus and Pluto make for a very powerful year to advance our understanding of astrology. So it's a great election year for studying. And I hope to see some of you in class soon.